Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Diana Maria Care Lopez Pinel. Diana Maria Care Lopez Pinel, born on August 12, 1998 in Madrid, came from a wealthy and close-knit family. Her parents, Diana Cristina Lopez Pinel and Juan Carlos, had a sister named Valeria. However, their family life was disrupted in 2013 when her parents divorced, leading to depression and competition between the sisters for their mother's attention. Despite the divorce, their father remained involved in their lives and would visit them regularly during vacations. Diana, her mother, and sister often spent their summers in the small coastal town of Poder do Carmo, which had a population of around 10,000. In the summer of 2016, they returned to their favorite vacation spot, Alba do Carmo, to enjoy the peace and beauty of the area. On the evening of August 21st, Diana told her mother that she was going to meet her friends at Valinclan Park to celebrate the Feast of the Virgin Carmen. It seemed like it would be just another typical summer evening. Diana regularly walked in Valinclan Park, which was close to her family's cottage. Her mother saw no problem with this and let her go there again. That evening, Diana had a good time with her friends, unaware that it would be their last encounter. After saying goodbye to her friends, she met Paso Diana Ariel, an acquaintance, near a pizzeria she often visited. They parted ways around 2:30 a.m., making Paso Diana Ariel the last person to see Diana that night. The morning of August 22, 2016, was a nightmare for Diana's mother, Maria Care Lopez Pinel. When Diana didn't return from a party, her mother became alarmed. The girl's phone was off or out of range, and her prolonged absence was unusual. Based on the information Diana's mother provided, it seemed that Diana didn't have any significant emotional or mental health issues, despite experiencing her parents' divorce. Maria immediately reported her daughter missing to the police at 8:30 a.m. Police investigated the mysterious disappearance of Diana Maria Care Lopez Pinel. Diana, also known as Diana, vanished without a trace, leaving behind only cryptic clues. The last messages she sent were to a friend in Madrid via WhatsApp, in which she described being stalked by a stranger who would shout strange phrases, frightening her. These messages were her final contact with the outside world. To retrace Diana's steps, the police searched the road she would have taken to get home. Along the way, they found a black hairband, similar to the one Diana wore that night. Unfortunately, it was the only clue found at the scene of her disappearance. Investigators had no other leads, despite questioning Diana's friends, who couldn't provide any helpful information. The lack of CCTV cameras on the last part of Diana's journey made it even more challenging. The dimly lit and deserted street had few landmarks, including some garages and a rundown Boomerang nightclub. Some witnesses reported seeing Diana exit a car with 3 men, then get into another car that drove her away from the port. However, these accounts were not corroborated. Investigators explored 2 main theories. First, that Diana was kidnapped by someone she knew, and second, that she was attacked by a stranger. Diana's mother even proposed a third possibility, that her daughter was taken away on a boat. Diana's friend and ex-boyfriend claimed that she met a man from Morocco and they purchased hashish together. However, this information only added to the mystery of her disappearance. The media reported that the clothes Diana wore that evening were found, but her mother denied this, stating that no such discovery was made. Furthermore, Diana left her credit card and identification behind, which suggested that she did not intentionally run away. This, along with other circumstances, indicated that her disappearance was not voluntary. Diana's disappearance remained a mystery despite efforts to solve it. The media soon revealed that Diana had argued with her mother just before she vanished, which led to reports of Diana having a nervous breakdown and requiring medical attention. Her younger sister Valeria, 16, was also hospitalized with similar symptoms. To avoid further conflict and litigation, the father was granted custody of Valeria. This decision was made on September 1st to prevent more tension in the community, which was already on edge due to Diana's disappearance. The father and daughter left town, fueling rumors that they were hiding something important. According to Diana's friends, it was not unusual for the sisters to run away from home, especially Valeria. The family had complicated relationships with frequent quarrels between the mother and daughters. Diana's mother was criticized for being overly anxious when Diana failed to return home, considering Diana had often left home on Wednesdays without incident. However, the family's actions raised suspicions when they canceled a scheduled press interview, citing emotional distress at the possibility of never seeing their daughter again. New information emerged on September 11th, contradicting the mother's claim that Diana didn't have mental health issues. It was revealed that Diana had gone missing for 3 days in April, and her mother had not reported it to the police. Diana would often turn off her phone to upset her mother, and had expressed a desire to no longer live with her. The letters exchanged between Diana and Valeria, published in the press, revealed that both sisters struggled with serious emotional issues. Valeria's problems were severe enough to land her in the hospital multiple times in the past year, including an incident where she had to have her stomach pumped due to a prescription drug overdose. With the investigation into Diana's disappearance stalled, prosecutors have shifted their focus to investigate the alleged abuse of Valeria, the youngest daughter of the Lopez panel family. Meanwhile, the search for Diana continues at full speed, with investigators working intensively to uncover the truth about her disappearance. Forensic experts analyzed various items belonging to Diana, including her toothbrush, comb, computer, diary, and prescription drugs, but found no leads. They also questioned her acquaintances, such as a Moroccan man she had a brief relationship with, but, again, no conclusive results. Despite extensive searches in the surrounding areas, the investigation remained stagnant. The search efforts focused on the mountains, forests, rivers, and lakes near the disappearance site, but Diana's phone signal was last detected in the Tarragon area, 13 miles away from her family's location, around 3 a.m. on the night of her disappearance. 72 days passed with no resolution, and all leads remained unconfirmed. However, the police did find a phone matching Diana's, which her father confirmed belonged to her. In a surprising twist, Diana's Facebook profile was activated 2 months after her disappearance, prompting friends and relatives to notify the police and provide screenshots. The Remind Password function had been used to bypass entering profile login details, leading to 2 possible explanations. Diana might have forgotten her password, or an attacker was attempting to access her profile. Unfortunately, Diana's phone, which could have held crucial clues, failed to provide any insights into her mysterious disappearance. On November 10, 2006, investigators finally identified the driver of the car in which Diana was last seen. Significantly, this individual had a prior record of human trafficking charges. However, details about his potential involvement in Diana's disappearance were kept under wraps to avoid jeopardizing the ongoing investigation. A pivotal incident occurred on December 25, 2017. A girl was accosted by a man who demanded her phone and threatened her with a weapon. The frightened victim screamed for help, and a passing couple rushed to her aid, rescuing her from the assailant who tried to drag her into a car. After the victim reported the incident to the police, providing a description of the attacker and their license plate number, officers arrested 41-year-old Jose Enrique Abinay, also known as Elo, the next morning. A background check revealed that Abinay had a prior criminal record and a surprising connection to a previous case. He was the same driver detained in 2016 for suspicion of kidnapping Diana Kerr, but was released due to his wife's alibi. Further questioning of Abinay and his wife led to a breakthrough. The wife confessed to previously lying, stating that her husband was not at home on the night of Diana's disappearance and did not return until 4 a.m. Under pressure, Abinay finally admitted to accidentally hitting Diana with his vehicle and fearing the consequences, disposing of her body rather than reporting the incident to the police. José's original story changed when he confessed to kidnapping and murdering Diana. He claimed that he went to the beach to collect gasoline from abandoned cars and came across Diana there. José kidnapped Diana, attempted to sexually assault her, and eventually strangled her. Diana Keir's disappearance was a long and distressing ordeal for her family and those who followed the case. The nearly 500-day investigation, accompanied by relentless media speculation, only added to her loved one's suffering. The unfounded accusations against Diana's parents further complicated and hindered the investigation. Nevertheless, through diligent investigation and the testimony of a second victim, investigators gathered sufficient evidence to identify the perpetrator. Diana will be fondly remembered by her loved ones as a vibrant and lively young woman who tragically crossed paths with a violent criminal. Her story highlights the importance of unity in combating crime, ending impunity, and ensuring the safety of all citizens. Unfortunately, Diana's body was hidden by the perpetrator, who refused to disclose its location for a long time. Eventually, after much effort from family and friends, they were finally able to locate her remains in an abandoned warehouse well in January 2018. This allowed them to give Diana a proper farewell and burial. As for the perpetrator, José, he was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 35 years. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Paula Salazar. Paula Salazar was born on September 6, 2015, in Venezuela to Andrina Bermudos Milian from Matarina, Monagas, and Leonardo Salazar from Tucupito, Delta Amacuro. In 2016, Paula's parents decided to move to Ecuador with their one-year-old daughter, seeking a better life. They settled in Quito, the capital city, but their relationship began to deteriorate due to various reasons. After a month, Andrina broke up with Leonardo and moved to Cuenca, Ecuador's third-largest city, with Paula. They stayed with her best friend's mother while looking for a new place to live and work. Meanwhile, Leonardo returned to his hometown of Tucupito, Venezuela, following the breakup. Later, he immigrated again, this time to Trinidad and Tobago. Leonardo had been living with a disability for a long time, the result of a motorcycle accident in his youth that left his left arm completely paralyzed. This made it difficult for him to find a good job, even in Ecuador's capital city. After Andrina moved to Cuenca, she rarely contacted Leonardo, except to tell him that she had found a job on a farm in Tapacundo. A few months later, she started a new romantic relationship with Washington Andreas Aymaro, the wealthy owner of the farm where she worked. Andrina and Andreas had a child together in 2019. With their new baby, the family seemed happier and more united than ever. However, their lives took a dramatic turn on March 27, 2020. On that day, Andreas took Paula to the flower plantations by car, but during the trip, Paula suddenly became very sick, feeling dizzy and vomiting. Andreas was forced to stop at a public restroom to tend to her. Andreas and the 4-year-old girl Paula entered a room where Paula vomited again. Andreas left her alone for a few minutes to get a change of clothes from the car, as her clothes were dirty. When he returned, he found Paula lying with her head in the toilet bowl. He pulled her out, tried to give her first aid, and rushed her to the hospital. Despite his efforts, Paula showed no signs of life when doctors examined her. The doctors pronounced Paula dead and immediately noticed inconsistencies in Andreas' story. They saw that Paula had bruises on her body and face that couldn't have occurred as Andreas described. Following medical protocol, the doctors contacted the police, who arrived shortly and arrested Andreas as a suspect in Paula's murder. Andreas claimed Paula had drowned in the toilet bowl, but the autopsy revealed a darker truth. The tests showed that Paula had been dead for about 24 hours before arriving at the hospital, contradicting Andreas's version of events. Paula's foster father alleged that he provided her with first aid and CPR, and that these efforts took place just 20 minutes before he brought her to the hospital. However, the autopsy revealed that Paula had suffered multiple broken ribs, various microtraumas, a cracked spine, and sepsis, which ultimately led to her death. The autopsy findings were alarming, as Paula's small body showed evidence of numerous injuries, both recent and old. The evidence suggested that her death was not accidental. Paula's biological father, Leonardo Salazar, discovered the tragic news 33 days after her death, when his mother in Venezuela called to inform him of the loss, having learned of it herself from a friend of Andreina's. After Leonardo left Ecuador, Andreina began a new relationship and cut off all communication with him. This is why he didn't hear about his daughter Paula's tragedy for 3 days. The only way he found out about her was through pictures sent by Andreina and their mutual friends. Andreina even blocked him on social media, preventing him from contacting Paula, and cut off ties with most of Leonardo's relatives. Andreina turned their mutual friends against Leonardo by telling them that he didn't want to communicate with Paula. However, it was Andreina's family who eventually informed Leonardo of Paula's death, claiming that she died from COVID-19 complications. But Leonardo was skeptical, as there were very few coronavirus deaths in Ecuador at the time. He started researching the statistics and noticed that there were no child victims of the coronavirus in Ecuador. Leonardo's relatives helped him investigate, and they soon found a newspaper article about Andreina's arrest on suspicion of killing Paula. When Leonardo confronted Andreina about this, she coldly told him that Paula died from diseases and couldn't provide more information due to her lawyer's advice. Leonardo then created a Facebook page and an Instagram profile dedicated to Paula, seeking justice for her death. The posts caused a huge backlash on social media, and people in Andreina's circle began contacting Leonardo, sharing information about Paula's sad life. They sent him recordings, photos, and audio recordings that revealed the abuse Paula suffered at the hands of her stepfather and Andreina. According to witnesses, Paula was constantly depressed, shy, and frightened in the presence of her stepfather. She even confessed to being beaten by Andreina and her stepfather as punishment. Paula called her stepfather a monster and was terrified of him. She suffered from insomnia and nightmares, and her mother forced her to cook and take care of herself from a very young age. Andreina's mistreatment of Paula eventually led to her death, and Leonardo was determined to bring her to justice. At the preschool Paula attended, she constantly complained of leg and back pain, and often said she couldn't walk. The teachers also noticed bruises on her body. They took her to the health center for an examination, and the doctors concluded that Paula was being mistreated by her family. The teachers then reported the abuse to a special police organization, which launched an investigation. As a result, Paula was temporarily placed in the care of her uncle, Andreina's brother, on October 16, 2019, while the investigation continued. A hearing was scheduled for December 4, 2019, but the teachers who were supposed to testify failed to show up. The hearing was rescheduled for February 27, 2020, but again, the teachers didn't appear. Without their testimony, the court had to drop the charges against Paula's parents, and she was returned to her mother on March 27. Tragically, Paula died soon after. It is suspected that Andreina may have bribed the teachers or convinced them that Paula's parents were not responsible for her abuse. After Paula's death, Andreina was placed in protective custody, but she appealed this decision. At a hearing on June 12, 2020, the judge set a restraining order and released Andreina to house arrest. Meanwhile, Paula's father, Leonardo, was campaigning on social media and raising funds to travel from Trinidad and Tobago to Ecuador to file a complaint against Andreina. With the help of 2 Ecuadorian lawyers, Oswaldo and Alejandro, Leonardo was able to travel to Ecuador and file a complaint against Andreina. Leonardo's journey was extremely difficult due to closed borders and restricted travel. He had to take a raft, cross treacherous terrain, and use private transfers to reach Ecuador. On June 30th, he arrived in Quito and met with a lawyer to file his complaint. On July 6, 2020, Andreina was charged with Paula's murder, and the court ruled that she could remain under house arrest, reporting to justice twice a week. Both Andreina and her partner, Andreas, were charged with murder, which carries a maximum sentence of 13 years in prison. In November 2020, a hearing was held to set a trial date. During the hearing, Leonardo's lawyer expressed concern that Andreina might escape, given her previous suicide attempt. They requested that Andreina be fitted with an electronic monitoring bracelet, which the judge granted. A hearing was held on November 16th to reassess previous decisions. Although this process slowed down the trial, the judge managed to set a date for December. Despite limited media coverage, information about the trial of Andreas and Andreina spread through social media. The trial began on January 14, 2021, but a decision on Andreina's alternative imprisonment options had not been made, and Andreas was still being held at the regional detention center. The trial was held in private, without media representatives present. Some participants joined via video link. The doctor who performed the autopsy on Paula revealed disturbing details. Paula had undergone extensive spinal reconstruction, had broken ribs that had healed on their own, and had signs of previous injuries. The autopsy also showed that Paula had nail stigmata, a condition where nails grow into the skin, as well as facial and bodily bruises and scratches, fluid buildup in her lungs, head scars, and intestinal lacerations. The assessment found that Paula's later injuries led to an infection, which gradually worsened into sepsis and ultimately caused her death. The autopsy report revealed that Paula had been dead for around 24 hours by the time Andreas took her to the hospital. The extent of her internal and external injuries shockingly demonstrated the extreme cruelty she suffered and the gross neglect by her guardians, who had never sought medical attention for her. Additionally, Paula was severely malnourished, underweight, and small for her age, with deficiencies in essential minerals and nutrients. In an attempt to downplay her role in Paula's abuse, her mother, Andreina, claimed that Paula had psychological problems, implying that the child's injuries were self-inflicted as a way to seek attention. The girl's mother testified that after her brother's birth, Paula felt neglected, stopped sleeping at night, and tried to control everyone by crying. Contrary to the decision of the authorities, Paula continued to live with her parents in October 2019, only spending a few nights at her uncle's house. This failed arrangement was linked to the abuse Paula suffered, which began in 2017, shortly after Leonardo left Ecuador. The mistreatment likely started when Andreina began a relationship with Andreas. More than 40 witnesses testified in court, confirming that Paula was a victim of abuse for at least 3 years of her short life. At the final court hearing, Andreina took full responsibility for abusing Paula, claiming she alone was responsible for the child's injuries. She admitted to physically punishing Paula with a belt and her fists. By doing so, Andreina attempted to exonerate her partner, stating he was innocent and had no involvement in the abuse. Andreina also revealed that she punished Paula because the child's presence was causing problems in her new relationship. She feared that if she broke up with her new husband, she would lose financial stability and be forced back onto the streets. As a result, caring for Paula was her lowest priority. After learning about Paula's background, the judges were concerned about the well-being of the couple's newborn son, but it's clear that he was not abused like Paula was. Andreas has consistently exercised his right to remain silent, making no statements about the incident since his arrest. By February 3, 2021, Paula's trial had concluded and the couple was sentenced. Both were found guilty of murdering the girl with a maximum sentence of 13 years. The original attorneys and the prosecution demanded the maximum punishment, but the chief judge considered an aggravating factor. Paula's age, just 4 years old, made her vulnerable and unable to defend herself. As a result, the judge sentenced Andreina and Andreas to 17 years and 4 months in prison. Under Ecuadorian law, the convicted couple had 3 days to appeal the verdict, which they were expected to do immediately. Although Andreina received a 17-year sentence, she remained on house arrest and didn't go to jail, as she exercised her right to appeal. Now a higher court must confirm her sentence for incarceration. She is still cooperating with the authorities, following the original guidelines. However, Andreas was arrested when he arrived at the hospital with a deceased girl. The fact that Andreina remains at large is causing widespread outrage and anger, particularly for Leonardo, who is concerned that she might use this opportunity to evade justice. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Nicole Lenway. Nicole Lenway, also known as Nikki Lenford, was born on July 11, 1989, in a small town in Minnesota. There is little information available about her parents and early life. According to some reports, her father left the family when she was young, and her mother raised her alone, providing her with a good education. Nikki was an exceptional student and athlete, excelling in track and field and martial arts. She decided to dedicate her life to fighting crime and served in law enforcement. After graduating with honors from the police academy, she moved to Minneapolis and joined the Criminal Investigation Department as an assistant investigator. Colleagues described Nikki as a determined, goal-oriented woman and a fearless officer, ready to take risks. However, in her personal life, she became a pawn in the hands of a sophisticated manipulator. In 2012, at a martial arts competition, 23-year-old Nicole met Timothy "Tim" Ama, a coach and martial arts master who was 8 years her senior. Timothy, a gentleman man, won Nikki's heart with his charming nature and kind gestures. He demonstrated his reliability and care, making Nikki fall deeply in love with him. They started a romantic relationship and moved in together. Initially, everything was wonderful, and Nikki felt happy and loved. However, Timothy's behavior began to change gradually. He revealed his true nature, but subtly enough that Nikki wasn't alarmed at first. Behind his charming facade, Timothy was a sophisticated tormentor who enjoyed flirting with other women, even in Nikki's presence. This behavior hurt and humiliated Nikki, making her feel insecure. Nikki had hoped that Timothy would eventually settle down and become more restrained, but months passed and his behavior didn't change. He continued to flirt and engage in affairs, assuring Nikki that he loved only her. When Nikki confronted him, he would snap at her, saying she had no right to tell him what to do. He would later apologize, telling Nikki that no one would ever love her as much as he did, and she would forgive him. The situation escalated in the fall of 2014 when Timothy flew into a rage during a minor argument, grabbing Nikki by the throat and choking her until she almost lost consciousness. He then pushed her into a wall, making her realize that she was in an unhealthy relationship. However, her emotional attachment to Timothy was too strong, and she forgave him once again. Timothy's behavior towards Nikki was extremely controlling and jealous. He would constantly monitor her movements, check her phone and social media without her permission, and accuse her of infidelity without any evidence. Despite his own infidelity, he would manipulate Nikki into believing that no one would ever love her as much as he did, trapping her in the relationship. In November 2015, after a violent argument, Nikki gathered her belongings and left the house. Timothy, who didn't believe she would actually leave, chased her down, grabbed her by the hair, and dragged her back inside. However, Nikki's screams and struggles attracted the attention of their neighbors, forcing Timothy to back down. Finally, free from the abusive relationship, Nikki felt a sense of relief. But Timothy didn't give up. He shifted his tactics from threats and blackmail to romantic gestures, sending flowers and messages filled with tenderness, pleading for another chance. For a month, Nikki stood firm, refusing to return to him. However, her plans were disrupted when she discovered she was pregnant in December 2015. Nikki knew that if Timothy found out, he would use it to manipulate her into getting back together. She tried to keep her pregnancy a secret, but their mutual friends and acquaintances soon informed Timothy, who urged her to return to him, arguing that their child should grow up in a complete family. Nikki, who grew up without a father, understood the challenges of single parenthood, but she also recognized that being with a manipulative and cruel person like Timothy would be detrimental to her and the child. Despite still having feelings for him, she refused to reunite with her ex-boyfriend, but she did agree to let him participate in their child's life as a nominal father. Nicole gave birth to a healthy boy named Callahan Ammer on June 20, 2016. The father, Tim, acknowledged paternity and initially expressed a desire to raise the child with Nicole. However, it soon became clear that Tim was not interested in being a good father and only wanted to use the child as a tool to manipulate Nicole. Nicole took almost a year of maternity leave to care for her son, devoting herself entirely to motherhood. Meanwhile, Tim continued his carefree life with multiple lovers and casual connections. He even had a system in place where he would signal to his lovers when he was available by turning on a purple light in his bedroom. In 2016, Tim started living with his 18-year-old protege, Colin, who had been deeply in love with him since she was 14. Despite the significant age difference, the couple hid their relationship from outsiders, claiming Colin was just renting a room in Tim's house. By the summer of 2017, Nicole was forced to return to work as a forensic expert at the Maine Police Headquarters in Minneapolis. With her unpredictable work schedule, she would often ask Tim to look after their son, mainly because she believed it was beneficial for the boy to spend time with his father and to save on nanny costs. However, Tim would always shift the responsibility onto Colin, who developed a fondness for the little boy and enjoyed taking care of him. Tim would tell Colin that Nicole was a bad mother who didn't want to care for her child and was looking for excuses to offload her son onto them. In the spring of 2017, Nicole started a new romantic relationship with a fellow police officer named Donovan Ford, who treated her with tenderness and care and expressed a desire to adopt Callahan. However, when Tim found out about their relationship, he became enraged and decided to use their son and the naive Colin to destroy Nicole's new relationship. Tim would regularly report to social services that Donovan was abusing Callahan and that Nicole was doing nothing to stop it, resulting in frequent visits from Child Protective Services. For years, Nicole and her new partner were subjected to harassment and intimidation by her ex-boyfriend, Timothy, who falsely accused them of domestic violence. Timothy convinced Colin, a friend, that Nicole and her partner were a danger to their son, Callahan, and that they might harm him. Timothy continued to psychologically manipulate Colin, convincing him that Callahan was in danger and that Nicole and her partner were cruel to him. Meanwhile, Timothy harassed and threatened Nicole and her partner, even filing false police reports against them. Donovan tried to have a calm and rational conversation with Timothy, but it didn't work. Timothy continued to terrorize Nicole and her partner, making their lives a living hell. He eventually took the matter to court, claiming he wanted sole custody of their son. Nicole was terrified, knowing Timothy's ability to lie and manipulate. She understood that he didn't actually care about their son's well-being. He just wanted to punish her for moving on with her life. Meanwhile, Nicole decided to seek a restraining order against Timothy, citing his erratic behavior and the threat he posed to her and her family. She was confident that she would gain custody of their son, but she knew the legal battles could drag on for years. During this time, Timothy continued to concoct fabricated stories, including a false accusation that Nicole had tried to run him over with her car. However, he couldn't provide any evidence to support his claim. In September 2022, the custody case went to court, with Timothy accusing Nicole of harming their son. However, the court saw through his lies and awarded sole custody to Nicole. Despite this, Timothy persisted and appealed the decision. He was eventually allowed to see his son at a specialized family center designed to minimize conflict between parents. However, on April 19, 2022, when Nicole arrived at the family center to pick up her son, a mysterious attacker dressed in black clothing and a mask approached her. shot her 4 times at close range and quickly disappeared. Incredibly, Nicole remained conscious and managed to call emergency services despite being severely injured. A woman happened to be driving by when she heard shots fired and saw a black figure jump into a vehicle and speed away. She immediately pulled over to ensure the shooter was gone, then rushed to help the victim, Nicole. The woman explained what had happened to the dispatcher, provided the address, and pressed her clothing against Nicole's wounds to stop the bleeding, ultimately saving her life. Nicole spent several days in a coma, teetering on the brink of life and death. She lost a lot of blood and her vital organs were affected, but doctors managed to stabilize her condition. Medical professionals believed Nicole was incredibly lucky, as death was only millimeters away from 2 bullets. One passed near an artery and the other nearly struck her heart. When Nicole regained consciousness, she reported to the police that her ex-lover, Timothy, was the one who had shot her. The police interrogated Timothy, who had a solid alibi since he was at the family center with his son at the time of the attack, as confirmed by staff and internal surveillance footage. The investigation also explored the possibility that someone among the criminals Nicole had previously arrested might have organized the attack. 4 casings were found at the scene, and a camera at the nearest intersection captured a suspicious black Dodge Ram pickup running a red light without license plates. An eyewitness reported seeing the same vehicle, which led the police to check what vehicles Timothy owned. During another interrogation, Timothy mentioned owning a Chevrolet Traverse SUV and a Dodge Challenger, but not a pickup. However, the investigation revealed that Timothy was lying, and a black Dodge Ram, identical to the one used by the shooter, was registered in his name. When shown the surveillance footage, Timothy admitted to owning the pickup, but claimed he rarely used it. The vehicle was equipped with colorful stickers, which were verified, but appeared to have been applied recently. While all the evidence was circumstantial, the police needed to find the weapon and the actual shooter to fully resolve the case. It was discovered that Timothy's vehicle had a satellite navigation system, allowing the tracing of the vehicle's entire route. The system revealed that the car was brought to the back entrance of a Tando school on the evening of April 18th, where it remained all night and almost the entire next day. Road cameras traced the vehicle's route, showing it arrived with license plates. The evening after the incident, the car used in the crime was found, but without the perpetrators. The person who drove the car that day was short and slender, with a feminine silhouette from a distance. As a result, the police decided to detain and question Amma's live-in girlfriend, Colin Larson. A search of their home was also conducted, and although the weapon used in the crime was not found, the police discovered ammunition of the same caliber. Colin, who was frightened, soon began to give confessional testimony, confirming that Timothy was the mastermind behind the crime. However, Colin believed that Timothy had acted with good intentions, thinking they were trying to save little Callahan from a cruel mother. Timothy had spent years manipulating Colin, convincing her that the boy was being mistreated and subjected to violence, and she unquestioningly believed every word. She felt sorry for the child and believed that Timothy wanted to protect him. The trial of the conspirators began in November of the same year. Colin confessed that Timothy had provided her with the firearm and had taken it back after the assassination attempt, but she didn't know what he did with it. The prosecution was largely built on circumstantial evidence, but Colin's confession was the decisive factor. The court also considered the testimony of the victim, Nicole, about Timothy's manipulative nature and his ability to deceive the women who loved him. Timothy Amma was found guilty of organizing a first-degree attempted murder, as well as incitement and aiding and abetting, and was sentenced to 18 years in prison. Colin Larson received 16 years in prison as the executive. A year after the assassination attempt, Nicole fully recovered physically and emotionally. She and Donovan officially legalized their relationship, and he became a loving father to Callahan. The now married Ford couple is expecting their first child together, and the woman who saved Nicole's life will be the child's godmother. It should be added that Timothy will be eligible for parole in 2035, but he will be prohibited from coming within 100 meters of his son, former lover, and her family members, and from attempting any form of contact with them. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Carmen Thomas. Carmen Thomas was born on October 30th, 1987, in South Africa. When she was just 10 years old, her father passed away. This tragic loss had a profound impact on her family, and they decided to Whitby, United Kingdom, to live with relatives. However, they did not find the peace they were seeking, and after some time, they returned to South Africa. Despite the challenges she faced, Carmen decided to stay with her relatives when she turned 18. She later moved to London, where she completed her studies and earned a master's degree in marketing. Carmen had a strong and charismatic personality that drew people to her. She was a loyal friend and companion to many, but living in a big city like London came with a high price tag. To maintain a decent standard of living, Carmen had to work hard. During the day, she worked as a marketer in a store, and in her free time, she worked part-time in a gentleman's club. Although her choice of part-time job may seem unusual, Carmen was a girl with strong values and never engaged in unnecessary or undignified behavior, which earned her the respect of her clients. In this place, she met Brad Callahan, a charming and flamboyant man. Born in New Zealand in April 1978, Brad's parents separated when he was 9 years old, and he stayed with his mother. They later moved to Australia in 2001. After graduating from university with an engineering degree in the construction industry, Brad was offered a job as chief structural engineer for a large business complex in the UK. To boost his professional image, Brad hired a gentleman's agency and met Carmen, a beautiful, intelligent, and tall woman with dark hair and bright eyes. Although they started with a casual arrangement, Brad and Carmen continued to communicate informally, which eventually turned into a strong friendship, and later, love. Their romantic relationship blossomed quickly, and they soon moved in together. Their life was built on trust, care, and mutual support, making them look absolutely happy. Carmen became pregnant, and Brad thought it would be best for them to move back to New Zealand, where the air is clean and the pace of life is more relaxed. They returned to Auckland in March 2005. After their son Jack was born, he brought immense joy and happiness into their lives from day one. Carmen and Brad prioritized his safety and well-being, providing everything he needed for a happy childhood. To them, Jack was the center of their universe. However, with Jack's arrival, serious disagreements began to surface in their relationship. The first disagreements arose over how to raise their child. As a result, their relationship became rocky and unstable, ultimately leading to their breakup 3 years later. Despite the challenges, they shared joint custody of Jack and made a genuine effort to maintain a positive relationship for his sake. The breakup was difficult for both Carmen and Brad, but they put their differences aside to ensure little Jack's well-being. Carmen and Jack moved in with Colin, Carmen's half-brother, in Oakland, seeking emotional support and a sense of family. As time passed, Carmen regained her emotional balance and started rebuilding her life without Brad. In 2008, she decided to move to a house on a nearby street to Brad's so her young son could be closer to his father. Carmen, who had lost her own father at a young age, wanted to ensure her child would have a father figure in his life as much as possible. Carmen and Brad maintained a relationship for the sake of their son, but many people mistakenly thought they remained couple. In truth, they only communicated when necessary to support their child. As they went their separate ways, both Carmen and Brad concentrated on finding personal happiness. Brad continued his career as a construction engineer and eventually started a new relationship in May 2009, which led to an engagement. Carmen focused on raising their son while working at the Gentlemen's Club, which upset Brad. He thought the mother of his child should not be involved in questionable activities. This disagreement created tension in their relationship, which worsened over time. Carmen issued ultimatums, but Brad ignored them. Despite this, Brad got married again and was expecting another child. His new financial responsibilities affected the alimony he paid Carmen for Jack's care. The money issue triggered a series of scandals. On March 19, 2010, neighbors called the police due to a domestic violence incident. Carmen was involved in a physical altercation with Brad during an argument and received a warning. Their relationship finally broke down. Even after separation, arguments continued. Each new question about Jack's care sparked aggression and conflict between the two former lovers. They couldn't agree on something as simple as which school Jack should attend, leading to more disputes. On June 29, 2010, Brad visited Carmen's house to finalize a written agreement for child support and discuss a new school for Jack. However, Carmen was unhappy with the document and refused to sign it. In a heated argument, she shouted that Jack was not Brad's son and told him to leave. Brad departed. 2 weeks passed without Brad contacting Carmen. Concerned for her safety, Brad reported Carmen Thomas missing to the police on July 13, 2010. The authorities took his report and launched an investigation. By analyzing video footage and interviewing neighbors, investigators were able to piece together a timeline of events leading up to Carmen's disappearance, uncovering crucial details that would aid in the search for her. On June 29th, a surveillance camera caught Carmen on tape at a nearby supermarket, not far from the house she shared with Jack. The police were alerted to the house when they noticed that there was no garbage can outside, which seemed unusual. Upon inspecting the house, they found traces of blood on the front door, washing machine, and shower. Forensic experts used luminol to detect blood evidence, which reacts with the iron in hemoglobin. The test revealed multiple patterns of bloodstains on the bathroom door and floor, confirming their suspicions. The landlady reported that on June 29th she heard loud screams, followed by prolonged crying and moaning. She went to Carmen's door, but no one answered. When she looked out the window, she saw a street trash can and an overturned drying rack on the ground. Alarmed, she called her husband. Before he arrived, Brad emerged from the house, holding dirty clothes. When he saw the landlady, he hastily explained that Carmen had undergone a medical procedure and had vomited blood. However, the landlady was suspicious, noting that Brad looked like he had just showered. Despite her doubts, she didn't call the police, as she had no reason to disbelieve Brad's story. The police investigation focused on Carmen's cell phone, which showed a steady stream of messages and calls. However, the tone and style of these communications didn't match Carmen's usual way of communicating. This sparked even more questions. Where did Carmen go for medical help, and why? Fortunately, the answers weren't far off. As the investigation continued, Carmen's car was discovered. In the back seat, her personal belongings, including luggage and clothes, were found. A closer look at the seized suitcase revealed bloodstains on some items. A note in the car revealed that Carmen owed money to her employer. A surprising discovery was made in the glove compartment, an envelope with Misty's name on it, containing $270. Police Inspector Mark Benefield suspected foul play after discovering bloodstains in Carmen's car. A search of the countryside southeast of Auckland was conducted, but Carmen's body was not found. The investigation continued, with detectives analyzing Carmen's and Brad's phone records. They made a surprising discovery. Both phones were in the same location throughout the search period, and Carmen's phone hadn't connected to a cell tower in Hamilton. A crucial piece of evidence was a missing trash can, which had vanished from its usual spot near the house on the day Carmen disappeared. A neighbor had seen it through her window. But why was it necessary for the trash can to be inside the house in the first place? The police investigated Brad's phone and financial records, which revealed some suspicious purchases on June 30th, including a meat cleaver, a large plastic container, and garbage bags. By examining Brad's daily routine, they found some unusual events that didn't fit his normal pattern. One day, he arrived at the construction site very early and spent a long time walking alone around the property. While this was unusual, it wasn't enough to raise concern among the workers who saw him. As the evidence mounted, including Carmen's phone and Brad's questionable purchases, he went from being a victim to a suspect. The police believed that Brad had killed Carmen by hitting her on the head multiple times and then hiding her body. On September 21st, Brad was arrested and charged with Carmen's murder and attempting to modify the course of justice. He pleaded not guilty and was scheduled for trial. In a surprising coincidence, Brad's second son was born to his new partner while he was in custody, causing a wave of emotion and resentment in the young father. 9 days after his arrest, Brad broke down and revealed to investigators where he had buried Carmen's body. Brad concocted a plan to make it seem like Carmen had left for Hamilton and never came back. Confident in his scheme, he was convinced he'd pulled it off. However, life had other plans. Under interrogation, Brad recounted the events of that fateful day. It began with a heated argument, which ended with Carmen kicking Brad out of the house and claiming Jack wasn't his son. Brad left, but 5 minutes later, he returned and struck Carmen on the head with a baseball bat, rendering her unconscious. The impact was severe, causing blood to gush from the wound and stain the floor bright red, accompanied by labored breathing. Standing over Carmen's lifeless body, Brad's eyes blazed with a wild, unhinged expression. He realized the gravity of his actions, but his anger and resentment towards Carmen's words clouded his judgment. In a fit of rage, he unleashed several more punches. Although aware of the irreparable consequences, his obsessive fury consumed him. Fleeting memories of happier times flashed before his eyes, but they were now forever lost. Brad knew his life would never be the same after that devastating moment, but he felt no remorse as he had eliminated his primary problem, and Jack was now exclusively his. After regaining consciousness, Brad took a shower and discreetly left Carmen's house. In the subsequent days, he took swift action to dispose of Carmen's body and conceal the evidence of the crime. He contacted his friend and arranged to meet him outside a supermarket, asking him to purchase 3 black garbage bags, kerosene, and cleaning supplies. Brad waited outside the store, trying to avoid raising suspicions. Once his friend had made the purchase, Brad returned to the apartment and began the cleanup process. He meticulously wiped away the blood spatter and then placed the body in a garbage bag, which he later discarded in a trash can. After Carmen's murdered, the defendant cut her body into 8 pieces to dispose of it. He severed her legs at the hip joints, then cut each leg into 2 pieces at the knee. He also severed her arms and head from her torso. On July 3rd, he confided in a friend at a boat ramp in Oahu Bay, Oakland, telling him that he had killed Carmen during an argument and needed help to get rid of the body. However, the friend refused to lend him a boat, and the attempt to dump the remains at sea failed. Over the next few days, the defendant drove to Wyrie Ridge in West Auckland and buried the body parts in a shallow grave. On July 7th, he drove Carmen's car to Hamilton and abandoned it in a hotel parking lot, leaving behind a suitcase of clothes and other personal belongings to make it seem like she had intentionally left. However, in his hurry, he failed to notice that the suitcase also contained bloody clothes. After disposing of the car, Brad attempted to create the illusion that Carmen was still alive by sending text messages from her cell phone to her friends. He pretended to be Carmen, claiming she was unwell and had been in poor health for days. However, Brad's plan ultimately failed. On October 1st, the police searched the burial site indicated by Brad and discovered Carmen's body. Her remains were found in plastic containers in a makeshift grave on Wyrie Ridge, and an autopsy revealed that she had died from multiple head injuries, including a fatal blow that caused a compressed skull fracture. After forensic examinations, Carmen's body was returned to her family for burial. A private funeral was held at Green Lane Christian Center on October 13th to honor Carmen, a young mother known for her cheerful, kind, and successful nature. Her son, little Jack, was only able to hug and kiss her white casket, having waited and hoped to see and hug his mother. The first court hearing for Carmen's case took place on February 8, 2011. Judge Venning found the crime to be unintentional, taking into account Brad's claim that he acted in a fit of rage. While Judge Venning acknowledged this, he was less lenient when it came to Brad's attempted cover-up. On May 26, 2011, Brad Callahan was charged with attempting to obstruct justice. According to the police investigation, on July 29, 2010, Callahan fatally struck Carmen Thomas multiple times in the head. He then sent a text message to a friend asking for 3 garbage bags and a bottle of kerosene. Subsequently, Callahan dismembered Carmen's body into 8 pieces to dispose of it. On November 25, 2011, a retrial was held, and police officers involved in the case filled the Auckland High Court. Unexpectedly, Brad Callahan pleaded guilty to 2 charges: murder and attempting to obstruct justice following Carmen's death. This was a reversal of his previous denial of guilt. The judge described Callahan's actions as one of the most serious cases of attempting to pervert the course of justice, stating it was as serious as it gets. The judge also characterized the murder of Carmen Thomas as brutal, but not severe enough to warrant the harshest sentencing laws. A 33-year-old man, Brad Callahan, was sentenced to life in prison for murdering Carmen Thomas in Auckland High Court. The court was packed with Carmen's friends and family, including her parents, who had traveled from South Africa. Judge Venning condemned Callahan's attempts to cover his tracks, describing them as insufficient to bring him to justice. Callahan will serve his life sentence and 6 years for attempting to pervert the course of justice concurrently. Detective Inspector Mark Benefield stated that Callahan's actions had a devastating impact on 2 families and that he had effectively passed judgment on himself. Callahan's supporters left the court without commenting. Carmen's family expressed their grief and anger over her tragic loss, grateful that Callahan will be imprisoned for a long time to reflect on the harm he caused. Her mother, Teresa Scott, was left completely devastated by the incident. Detective Mark Benefield explained that the 10-week investigation into Carmen's disappearance involved hundreds of hours of police work. Early on, they suspected she was murdered and carefully gathered evidence, following proper legal procedures. Benefield praised the cooperation with the defendant's employer and ongoing efforts to search the construction site for more evidence. He didn't rule out further arrests or charges related to Carmen's death. The Thomas family is devastated, saying they'll never forgive Brad for his actions. However, Carmen's stepfather, Wayne Callahan, and his attorney, Stuart Grieve, acknowledged Brad's acceptance of responsibility and won't challenge the sentence. The case raises concerns about potential biases against Carmen due to her profession, but emphasizes that the victim is not to blame and Brad's actions were inexcusable. The case has garnered significant media attention due to its rarity in New Zealand. The impact on Carmen's young son, Jack, who now lives under an assumed name, is also discussed, with the need to protect him from learning the truth about his mother's fate. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Vicki Roberts. Vicki Roberts, born Victoria Smith, was born in September 1984 in Cheshire, England. She grew up in a conservative and religious family with an older sister. The sisters attended a Christian school where they developed their musical talents and sang in the choir. Vicki was known for being kind, friendly, and helpful, always willing to lend a hand. After high school, Vicki enrolled in university and worked part-time at an IKEA store to fund her education. That's where she met Michael Roberts, a charismatic and sociable young man who was only a year older than her. Michael was also a student and an athlete who took care of his appearance. Initially, Vicki found Michael too talkative and intrusive, but he eventually won her over with his charming personality. Michael was born in June 1983 in Warrington, Cheshire, to a prominent chemical engineer and his family. As the eldest of two sons, Michael was raised with high expectations and strict discipline. His parents instilled in him the belief that he was destined for greatness, and Michael grew up to be ambitious, driven, and confident. He was a natural socialite, effortlessly making friends and commanding attention with his charismatic personality. His striking appearance, sense of humor, and intellectual curiosity only added to his charm. However, his parents' constant praise and emphasis on his superiority may have contributed to Michael's growing narcissism, which intensified over time. Michael desperately wanted to please his parents, so he strived to be the perfect son and meet their expectations. Meanwhile, Roberts, a womanizer, had a string of girlfriends and mistresses. He was skilled at secretly dating multiple people simultaneously, making each one believe they were the only one. He got a thrill from pursuing girls, particularly those who seemed out of his reach. One such girl was Vicky, who Michael was determined to win over. Initially, she kept him at arm's length, rejecting even his casual invitations to walk together after work or grab coffee. Vicky was a dedicated student and devoted her free time to church activities, leaving no room for dating or romance. It took Michael a few months to convince Vicky to go out with him. He won her over with his charming and sweet nature, showering her with flowers, gifts, and little surprises. He even took her to meet his parents, who adored her and gave their seal of approval for their son's choice. Vicky was convinced of his sincerity and eventually agreed to be his girlfriend. Michael became her first love and for a while, her only one. She was deeply happy with him, and it seemed like destiny had brought them together. Michael, too, seemed to fall in love and was ready to settle down, but their happiness was short-lived. From the outside, their relationship looked perfect. They were both young, attractive, full of energy, ambitious, and had big plans for the future. However, Vicky soon discovered that Michael had an irrepressible sexual appetite and a passion for experimentation in bed. At first, Michael didn't pressure Vicky too much, fearing she would leave him. But once he was confident she wouldn't go anywhere, he revealed his true desires. The modest and religious Vicky was shocked by what was happening, but she was deeply in love with Michael and trusted him. For a long time, she kept their bedroom secrets hidden behind closed doors. Michael made her an official marriage proposal, which she happily accepted. She genuinely believed that after the wedding, her fiancé would stop his extreme experiments. Meanwhile, one of Vicky's closest friends began to notice that she was hiding bruises and small injuries under her clothes. The friend confronted Vicky, asking if her fiancé was abusing her and if she needed help. At first, Vicky denied everything, but eventually admitted that the marks were a result of her fiancé's extreme intimate experiments. Michael had a strong passion for bondage and using various toys and devices. Vicky confided in her friend that they had intimate encounters up to 5 times a day, but Michael still remained unsatisfied. He saw himself as a skilled lover, and intimacy was an art form and a way for him to express himself. Although Michael occasionally made concessions when Vicky refused to participate in some of his dangerous experiments, he usually managed to convince her to go along with his desires. After defending her diploma, Vic found herself facing an unplanned pregnancy, which prompted her to change jobs. She was soon hired as an account manager at a logistics company. Around the same time, Michael left IKEA and began working as a sales consultant at a large retail chain selling electronics. Michael flourished in his new role, leveraging his charisma, communication, and persuasive skills to consistently exceed sales targets. As a result, he quickly rose through the ranks, earning a promotion to senior sales. The management even considered transferring him to the main office, but first he needed to undergo training and improve his qualifications. As Michael attended training sessions and traveled to London for business, he felt proud and accomplished. However, in the process, he began to neglect his young fiancée, Vic. He only seemed to remember her existence when he needed intimacy, and their relationship suffered as a result. They stopped talking, hardly spent time together, and outside of the bedroom, Vic seemed to be invisible to him. Michael started having numerous affairs with co-workers, clients, and mere acquaintances while simultaneously planning his wedding to Vicky. He had an insatiable appetite for intimacy with various women, which boosted his self-esteem and gave him a sense of accomplishment. When Vicky discovered she was pregnant, she excitedly shared the news with Michael, expecting him to expedite their wedding plans. However, Michael's reaction was one of anger and frustration. He insisted that Vicky terminate the pregnancy, citing their young age and the idea that they had their whole lives ahead of them to have children. Vicky was shocked by his demand, but refused to consider abortion, prompting Michael to try to persuade her through other means. Michael convinced the bride, Vicky, that if her religious parents found out she was pregnant and living with him out of wedlock, they would be furious. He promised that they would keep the abortion a secret and have children after they got married. Vicky was torn, but Michael's persuasive nature eventually won her over, and she had the procedure. However, the abortion came with complications, and Vicky spent several days in the hospital, followed by 3 weeks of recovery. The doctor strictly forbade her from having sex during this time, which sent Michael into a rage. It dawned on Vicky that Michael had mental health issues and a sex addiction. Without intimacy, he became unhinged, often leaving the house, claiming he had urgent work matters to attend to. Vicky suspected that Michael was seeking intimacy outside their relationship, but she genuinely believed that everything would change after they got married, and she could help him overcome his infidelity. However, their 2-year engagement revealed a different reality. Michael had no intention of marrying Vicky, as his current situation suited him perfectly. He had a loyal fiancée at home who took care of his household needs, as well as multiple mistresses on the side, whom he regularly replaced. Vicky always took Michael's promises at face value, even when she discovered his infidelity. She forgave him as long as he assured her it was the last time and that he would change. However, as time passed, Vicky began to pressure Michael for marriage, as she wanted a complete family and children. Her parents also increasingly raised this question, but what ultimately pushed the issue was the insistence of Michael's parents, whom he didn't want to disappoint. Vicky was a kind and sweet person, whom everyone loved. Her parents-in-law adored her and considered her an ideal match for their son. They were eager to see the couple get married and have grandchildren. With the help of their parents, the couple organized a grand wedding with all the trimmings, including a white dress and a limousine. The newlyweds looked happy and in love, with a long and fulfilling life ahead of them. After the wedding, the couple settled into a large and cozy house in a prestigious area of Warrington, not far from Robert's parents. However, what the relatives didn't know was that Michael had a dark side that Vicky was already well aware of. Despite being married, Michael did not love Vicky and only saw her as a way to appear normal in the eyes of others. Vicky never complained about Michael's infidelities and strange behaviors, and he was able to continue cheating on her without anyone suspecting a thing. At work, Michael was successful, earning promotions and a good salary after being transferred to a new office. Michael's direct supervisor, Carrie Hall, was a 10-year-old older, divorced mother who worked as the head of administration at Phones for You. Despite her busy schedule, she was attractive, well-groomed, and strong-willed as required by her position. For a long time, she ignored the signs of attention from her young subordinate, Michael. However, Michael saw this as a challenge and made a concerted effort to win her over, using his natural charm and eloquence. After about a month, Carrie reciprocated and they began a romantic relationship, secretly meeting in hotel rooms. Carrie described their relationship as turbulent, passionate, and experimental. As a mature, self-confident woman, Carrie was flattered by the attention of a younger man and was open to trying new things. With her, Michael could fulfill his fantasies that he couldn't with his modest wife. Michael frequently deceived his wife by claiming he was working late or attending corporate trainings, when in reality, he was meeting his mistress. He confided in his mistress about his unhappiness in his marriage, calling it a youthful mistake and expressing his willingness to divorce his wife. However, he failed to take action as his wife refused to grant him a divorce. The affair with Carrie lasted over a year, but she didn't pressure him for divorce, content with their secret hotel trysts, physical marks, and risky games. Carrie, a sports enthusiast who always took pride in her figure, suddenly changed her style after starting a relationship with Michael. She began wearing long-sleeved, high-necked clothes, which was unusual for her. A concerned friend noticed the change, and Carrie confided in her about Michael's unusual intimate preferences. She revealed that Michael enjoyed experimenting with rough, controlling behaviors, such as biting, squeezing, and tying her up. Carrie showed her friend the physical marks these activities had left on her body. Although her friend urged her to go to the police, Carrie refused, saying that she had consented to these activities and that Michael usually warned her beforehand. However, she admitted that things sometimes got out of control, like when Michael would strangle her to supposedly enhance her pleasure, causing her to lose consciousness. Despite fearing these strangulation games, Carrie continued to succumb to Michael's persuasion, hoping that he would eventually tire of these cruel experiments or that she would become desensitized to them. Michael's wife and mistresses didn't try to intervene. Before they got married, Vicky had already suspected Michael's infidelity through open letters and a love letter. Despite knowing about his affairs, she believed her love and care could transform him into an exemplary family man. However, after their wedding, the situation deteriorated, and Michael convincingly denied his cheating. Vicky decided to investigate her husband's infidelity by looking through his phone while he was asleep. She was shocked to discover numerous intimate conversations between Michael and Carrie, as well as other girls, including explicit photos. Despite her devastation, Vicky did not want to upset her family, so she kept the discovery to herself and moved in with a friend instead of telling her parents and sister. Before leaving, Vicky wrote a heartfelt letter to Michael, confessing her love for him and acknowledging that he was the central figure in her life. However, she also made it clear that she was aware of his infidelity and would not tolerate it. Vicky informed Michael that she was giving him time to reflect on their relationship, but she would not stay in the marriage if his behavior continued. She wrote the letter by hand and left it on the refrigerator for him to find. Michael didn't feel emotional about the message, nor was he upset by his wife's departure. However, he didn't want to lose the comfort of having a quiet and obedient partner who took care of the household and put up with his quirky behavior and unusual tastes. That same evening, Michael went to Vicky's friend's house, bringing a large bouquet of flowers. He got down on his knees, apologized, and begged Vicky to come back to him, promising to be faithful and making her his one and only. Vicky wanted to believe him and decided to return home, where a new mistress was waiting. Michael didn't stop seeing Carrie, but he became more cautious and even made an effort to come home for dinner, which his wife had carefully prepared. He deleted messages on his phone, changed the password on his social media profiles, and started an affair with a young employee named Karen Wilson, who was engaged to be married. Despite this, Michael pursued Karen relentlessly, making himself out to be a miserable and unhappy lover. He was so drawn to Karen that after 2 months, he decided to end things with 33-year-old Carrie Hall, whom he had grown tired of. Michael told Karen a fabricated story about being unhappy in his marriage and promised to leave his wife soon. Karen eventually gave in, and they became intimate in the office. A week later, she broke off her engagement and waited for Michael to follow through on his promise. Michael didn't plan to divorce Vicky, but he wanted to end their connection and start a new relationship with another woman. To achieve this, he lied to Vicky, telling her that he had already filed for divorce and moved in with his parents. This was a fatal mistake, as Vicky became suspicious that he was still cheating on her. Decided to take action, Vicky waited until Michael was in the shower and took his phone, but she found nothing incriminating because he had deleted all text messages and changed the password on his social media account. Undeterred, Vicky waited until Michael fell asleep and then took his work laptop, where she discovered his account on the social network was still active. On the laptop, she found conversations with his new girlfriend, in which he confessed his love, claimed to be divorcing his wife, and said he was living with his parents. The discovery was a huge shock for Vicky. She took screenshots of the intimate messages as proof of her husband's infidelity and saved them on her laptop. She also found several hotel room receipts in his wallet, which further implicated him. The next morning, Vicky confronted Michael with the evidence, and for the first time in their relationship, she lost her temper. Michael tried to apologize and promised to change, but Vicky threatened to tell his parents everything, hoping they could finally make him see sense. Michael was furious when his wife Vicky threatened to reveal his secrets to his parents. In a fit of rage, he slapped her. Vicky, determined to carry out her threat, got up and headed for the door. Michael caught up with her, grabbed a heavy jewelry box from the dressing table, and hit her twice on the head, knocking her unconscious. Then, he squeezed her throat with his hands until she stopped breathing. With no remorse, Michael wrapped Vicky's lifeless body in a blanket, packed it into several large garbage bags, and carried it to the garage. He then quickly cleaned up the house, removing most of Vicky's belongings. After calling Karen, he invited her over and they had dinner, enjoying themselves in the same house where he had just murdered his wife. The next day, Michael ran off with Karen, leaving behind the scene of his crime. Michael told his parents that his wife had left him for another man. To convince them, he went to their home, cried on his mother's shoulder, and showed her messages on his wife's phone. But what he didn't reveal was that he had sent those messages himself, pretending to be his wife. The messages said that she had lost interest in him, met someone else, and wanted to live with this new person. Meanwhile, Michael also sent messages to his wife's parents from her phone, saying that she had fallen in love with someone else, left with him, and asked them not to contact her and give her space. The Smiths, concerned about their daughter Vicky, immediately tried to contact her, but their calls were consistently rejected. In response, they only received messages asking them to give her time, which seemed strange to them. They then decided to visit Michael's house to get some answers, but his story only raised more questions and doubts. When they discovered that Vicky had stopped showing up for work without warning, they became even more worried and decided to file a police report. On December 1st, 2009, the police launched an investigation. It was discovered that Michael had purchased a shovel, rope, rags, and detergents from a hardware store that day, which seemed suspicious. However, he hadn't disposed of the body by the time the police arrived at his home. Although the police didn't find anything incriminating, Michael's behavior and story raised many questions. What was particularly striking was that they overlooked a large package in the corner of the garage. During the initial inspection of the marital home, no signs of the missing woman's clothes, documents, or personal belongings were found, suggesting that she might have voluntarily left. However, Vicky's laptop was discovered in the bedroom, and upon seizing it, the police found screenshots of Michael's conversations with his mistresses, which Vicky had saved. The police then requested a geolocation of Vicky's cell phone, which regularly received messages from her husband and relatives. The search revealed that the phone had been in the marital home the entire time. In a subsequent search of the Roberts home, law enforcement officials made a disturbing discovery in the garage. But just as they were processing this new evidence, Michael suddenly vanished from under their noses, taking a wallet with cash that allowed him to remain hidden for several days. Michael's money ran out, so he turned to one of his mistresses, Lavina T., asking to stay with her for a while. However, one evening, she heard on the news that Michael was wanted for murdering his wife. Without hesitation, she reported his whereabouts to the police, leading to his arrest. When questioned, Michael broke down in tears, claiming he was innocent. He insisted that his wife's death was an accident, resulting from a consensual intimate game where she asked him to strangle her with a rope belt, but he overdid it. However, forensic experts uncovered contradictory evidence. The autopsy revealed that Michael's wife was strangled with bare hands, attacked from behind, and had 2 extensive hematomas on her head that occurred before her death, ruling out any connection to the alleged intimate game. Michael's trial began in January 2010, where he continued to plead innocence and hoped for leniency. Nevertheless, the autopsy results proved that Michael brutally hit his wife twice on the head and then strangled her, hiding her body in the garage. Michael Roberts was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison, but with the possibility of parole after serving 17 years. This means that, if he demonstrates good behavior, he may be eligible for release as early as 2027.